Dear friends, dear colleagues, good morning. We are glad to welcome you here at public discussion that is carried out by the New Europe Center with the German Center GIZ, and today we are speaking about Ukrainian and German relations. I am Kateryna Zarembo, and I am the Deputy Director of the New Europe Center, and in a minute I'm going to present our honorable speakers who joined us today, and today we are going to discuss relations between Ukraine and Germany, and this discussion was inspired by several aspects of our cooperation. And recently in Germany, a new old government was formed, and for bilateral relations it means that the situation is new. This is reloading, and in German parliament they will have other people who support Ukraine, and some old problems remain unsolved. So there is big spectrum of bilateral agenda, and Ukraine and Germany should deal with resolving these problems. And now we carry out this discussion on the eve of two visits at the top level, the President of Germany, Mr. Steinmeier, and Guy Thomas, and this means that also we had high visits of German deputies and ministers and deputies of different parties, and there is great interest of on both sides, and also we prepared several researches that we are going to present and discuss. That's why I'm going to now give the floor to Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Federal Republic of Germany to Ukraine, Ernst Reichel, and he is going to tell us about the framework of our bilateral relations.
Glad to be here, and thank you very much for having been invited. I guess we are all gearing up for the Champions League final. I'm also very excited about today. No, this is a little joke of mine. What is today is the Champions League final of the ladies, where a German team is playing against the French team, and my French colleague and I, we will do a visit this together and have a good time together, in a friendly spirit. Let me, maybe to begin with a topic, let me relate a few facts and figures, first of all. Since 2014, Germany alone has given Ukraine almost 1 billion of grants, development grants. Add to this 500 million of special subsidized loans offered by Chancellor Merkel, which she made available to Ukraine. Germany is the largest bilateral humanitarian donor. And of course, as you probably know, about up to 25% of what the EU has in cash available comes from Germany. So this is, as you of course understand, not money that falls from the sky, but it is money that German taxpayers have worked for. I would also like to recall how intensively Chancellor Merkel has been engaged in defense and in support of Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty. This not only she, though, but also successive foreign ministers and, of course, the civil servants like myself who spend their time working on these issues. I dare say Chancellor Merkel is the foreign head of state or government who has put most of her time and of her energy into Ukraine. And She, as you know, she played a crucial role in seeing to it that the aggression in the east stopped within the oblasts of Donetsk and Luhansk, and actually by means of the often harshly criticized Minsk agreements. Why am I reminding you of this? Not because I'm asking for gratitude, but to demonstrate to you that we are your friends. And in fact, Ukraine is for us a friend in particularly difficult circumstances, and therefore needs extra support and solidarity. But there's something that worries me that is not, as you may, I see the little bubbles popping up in your head now, which read Nord Stream 2, but it's not, I'm sure we'll come to this, but this is not what I want to say at the outset. What worries me is the increasing tendency in public discourse here to see matters through the lens of friend and foe or hero and traitor. In fact, Kiev Post has a weekly feature which is exactly named this way, Friend and Foe of Ukraine. I suppose this is to a certain extent due to the war situation Ukraine is in, but I believe it is harmful to Ukraine itself. Even among friends, it's clear there cannot be 100% agreement. There are areas where we outsiders believe we have advice to give, or matters we think we must insist on, as you know. And at the same time, while it is clear that Ukraine is not on speaking terms with Russia, I think it has been useful and good for Russia that Germany has always maintained a conversation with Russia, a critical conversation. And in particular, again, I would point at the Minsk agreements where I think this has paid out for Ukraine. When a friend takes such a helping role, he or she will not be able to fulfill 100% all psychological needs or expectations. Rhetorically, psychologically, whatever you can think of. But the fact remains that we are Ukraine's friends, and maybe even a more useful friend than a friend who always says exactly what Ukraine likes to hear, or agrees with everything and does everything Ukraine wants. Nonetheless, when we, or even only some people in Germany, do not completely fulfill Ukraine's expectations or say something unwelcome, it happens that public discourse here puts us into the box of what I mentioned earlier, the traitors. And that is a difficulty. For instance, there's some catchwords are phrases which have been used are the Schröderization of Germany. Actually, Schröder is a politician of the past, not of the present or the future. Yeah? They are all bought by Putin is a common perception, or agents of Russian hybrid warfare. Yeah? Now, I think you will all understand that this way of addressing your friends is for those who, in case of those who maybe waver in Germany about which position to take on Russia and Ukraine. In this case, at least you're not winning the hearts and minds of these people by giving them this kind of discourse. And in the case of those who are strong supporters of Ukraine and of positions Ukraine shares, and that goes for the government, in fact, it is insulting. You need to know that, yeah? Or at least those here who kind of use these expressions, and so need to be aware of that, I think. Being friends requires that one listens to each other's arguments and responds to them rationally, takes them seriously. I think goes for both sides, evidently, but I think that's important. And this is also why I'm glad that we're having this conversation today, so we can kind of open a rational level of discourse here. Please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying what I've just described is the dominant feature of German-Ukrainian relations. But I think since we are having a discussion here on how to deal with Germany, I feel that I also have to mention this, which is maybe a matter that will show its effects as a little bit like a slow poison will start can have its effects in the middle and longer term rather. Yeah. My bottom line is, we are your friends, and please treat us like friends and trust our good intentions, and if there are disagreements, which invariably there will be, let's try to sort them out reasonably. So this was now my introduction, but of course I know and I'm completely open to discuss any topic which is on your minds. Thank you very much.
Дуже дякую, Ваша Високоповажність.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for your introduction and your remarks. They are very sincere. The friends could not agree, but on all the points, but we can achieve agreement, reach agreement on the more points, the more issues we can, and we will disseminate your remarks as wide as possible. I would like to give the floor to Andreas Schumann, von Schumann, Director of Bureau for Political Communication, German Society for International Cooperation, GIZ. Recently, the analytical product, the research was conducted which helps the understanding between the countries. The product is named Ukraine through the eyes of Germany. It would be very interesting for Ukrainians to see this research results. It was already presented in Berlin, how Ukraine is seen, is viewed by certain layers of German people from this research findings, the background of positions and the positions themselves could be understood. We're giving the floor to Mr. von Schumann. Could you tell us more about your work?
First of all, good morning everybody, and thank you very much for this opportunity to speak a little bit about our study, about pictures and perception of your country in Germany. What was the reason for this survey? There are two main reasons. One reason is that, as you know, perception is reflect not the truth, but perception is real. And for us, it's important to know about the perception in Germany and to discuss about the perception because the perception has an impact of the framework conditions of our cooperation. And secondly, and that's mentioned and stressed our ambassador, Ukraine will remains an Ukraine remain a very important partner for Germany, but also Germany is a key partner for Ukraine, and that's why we should look what are the views on Ukraine. But also, only by the way, we made also last year a study about Germany in the eyes of the world, and the first time we included also Ukraine in this survey. That means we did it on both sides, not only look to the perception of Ukraine in Germany. So, let me give some inputs. I hope everybody has get one copy in German or in Ukraine of this study, and you will see there's that there's in a lot of room material also for you, but also in Germany you can use it. But I will give in a nutshell some main findings or results. Firstly, the German views on Ukraine is considered too narrow, the relevant knowledge too sketchy, the attention too fleeting, and the assessment not sufficiently substantiated. That sounds not so good, but that describes the challenge if you want to change the perception. And that is the main reason for this study. We use this study to support political stakeholders in Ukraine, but also in Germany, in their political communication. Many times the discussion in Germany tends to be reduced to the so-called 4 Cs. That means Crimea, conflict, crisis, corruption. To avoid misunderstanding, it's very important to discuss about these 4 issues, but the reduction is a challenge. That means in our discussion with the expert on Ukraine, they mentioned, one quotation was, oh, vice versa. It would be another discussion if we start to discuss about the potential of Ukraine and not only about the problems, then we will get also another reception in Germany. And that was for me also very interesting, because I learned a lot about the perception of Ukraine, but also I learned a lot about the observer. Because it is not only the problem of representation on the part of Ukraine. This distorted perception is mostly generated by the observer, because one issue is, and you know it, there is a three-way perception, in other words. The three-way relationship between Moscow, Kiev and Berlin dominated the interviews, dominate the discussion, albeit with contrasting results. That means the relationship from Germany to Russia and to Ukraine always is mixed. And but the perception is very, very different. On the one side is, oh, please don't disturb our relations to Russia with this Ukraine issue. But on the other side, there is above all, after the Maidan, and strong solidarity, and some wanted to have not only soft support by soft power, also support by hard power. You see that is a wide range, but always the discussion is linked between this with this three-way relationship. We had one discussion, and there was a summary. It is not necessary to make a decision between our old love to Russia and our young love to Ukraine. We have only to make a decision about about international law, because that is our German interest. Everybody in Europe has to accept the international law, and that is maybe that could be an approach to support a little bit the Germans, which have strong feelings towards Russia, and the others which have strong feelings to Ukraine. So, but finally, I would like that we discuss also about the perspectives and what people in Germany expect about the future in Ukraine, and one main finding was a deep desire by these experts on Ukraine that Germany and the Germans would engage with Ukraine more frequently and intensively. And there were different motives, and but I think it's interesting to realize also these motives. One is the historical responsibility of Germans, another is the cultural diversity of Ukraine, and then the economic potential of Ukraine, the necessity to provide stability in Europe East, and at least also the hope that the modernization of Ukraine will also have an impulse to the future development of Europe. You see, it's very different motives, but I think all these motives are starting point to come to a better understanding in the discussion between Germans and Ukraine.
Дуже дякую, пане фон Шуман.
Thank you very much, Mr. von Schumann. I would like to stress that the copies of research you can get from us in Ukrainian and German. On our side, we generated some infographics. There are very many interesting illustrations which demonstrate different stands, different perception of Ukraine by German society. I would like to give the floor to Olena Getmanchuk, the director of the Center New Europe, to reflect on this research and wider context of Ukraine-Germany relationship. Thank you, Kateryna. First of all, I would like to thank GIZ about this research, which inspired us so much that we decided to initiate this discussion. For us, for our center, for our team, it is very important because it is a very important addition to the research we conducted in Germany. TNS Europe conducted the survey among Germans as to the association with Ukraine, and it was very interesting for us to compare what common features we have, common perceptions we have between Germany and Ukraine, how experts perceive Ukraine. So in your research, Mr. Andreas, the experts from various lands of Germany took part. They were respondents and they were from different sectors. What was the common feature? In 2015, we found that the key associations among Germans about Ukraine is the war, over 50%. This was the first association. Russia, Klitschko, brothers Klitschko's, poverty and crisis. The 4K or the 4C we have in a wide manner. This is the responses and war crisis coincide with the findings of your research. Maybe brothers Klitschko is the only not negative association. It is at least neutral and personalized. So, of course, based on our survey and your survey, further we can develop our strategy of relationship cooperation with Germany on different levels. As Ms. Kateryna already said, in our center we have prepared the policy memo how Ukraine can work further, can deal further with Germany and the new old coalition. How should Ukraine approach Germany? So, and in close cooperation with the German colleagues from German think tanks who are our partners, we are cooperating closely with, and we will continue cooperating with them. What Ukraine can do in order for our situative partnership, as we call it, for it to become our strategic partnership. So, as to the question of today's discussion, how Ukraine can deal with Germany and the new coalition, my response will be short, will be brief, to work the same way as it was with the old government, but put in twice more efforts and not focusing only on Chancellor Merkel. Ukraine was in a position in the context that we could allow ourselves to focus our policy on Chancellor Merkel, but now we should work on having in focus systemic relations with Germany, not only with Chancellor Merkel, but engage into this dialogue more and more players on the German side, because the political landscape somewhat is changing, and those issues which Ms. Merkel could have done easy, but it would not be so in future. This concerns also the three objectives as to Ukraine, to preserve unity as towards Ukraine and help and facilitating to preserve unity of opinions towards Ukraine in transatlantic perceptions. We see the old coalition, but the government has changed a little. We see those people who in the ministries have already been cooperating with Ukrainian dossiers. There are some new ministers in the cabinet who know the topic of Ukraine. We can work with them. We should preserve the dialogue which we had at the level of state secretaries, and we should deepen the dialogue and to change position into proactive one, but not wait for invitations of the German side. This concerns our relationship with Bundestag, which Ukraine, to my opinion, underestimated, underappreciated. We should put twice more efforts. Those people who are so-called are friendly to Ukraine, they did not run in these real elections. It is very pleasant to see the interest to Ukraine topics. There were many delegations, and Kateryna and me, we had a very good meeting with the delegation of Social Democratic Party delegation. We had detailed discussion on various topics. This proves the availability of interest. The interest is present, and the dialogue with Bundestag should be intensified. Maybe to this end we should reload Ukrainian side of friendship tip so that we have more active delegates, more active members who are really committed to development of Ukraine-German relations. And in the context, in this context, in our relations, the topics of Nord Stream 2, which does not unite us, it becomes on one of the top on the agenda, and we see the conceptual difference in vision of this project. Our German partners often say they see this pipeline as the mechanism of impact on Russia, but on our side we see it as the mechanism on the influence of Ukraine on the part of Russia and Europe. And we see active discussion in Germany among political forces how to have development of further relations with Russia, because this also have impact on relations with Ukraine. Some experts say that there is only one political force, the Green Party in Germany, who do not have commitment to either imposing sanctions or lifting sanctions from Russia. So the issue of sanctions should be communicated more intensively and in the Western lands as well. And the issue of decentralization, taking into account the statuses and the importance of lands in Germany, it is one of priority issues. So German lands delegates should be invited to Ukraine, taking into account decentralization in Germany. This would be the 10th visit organized by our team to Ukraine for leaders of opinions and German members will be represented, and we will be glad to include members from the lands of Germany, not only central government. And as you remember, the leaders of eastern lands of Germany, they have already signed an application to lift sanctions from Russia. There are many issues we can discuss, and we will comment on them later, but today it is very important to answer the question how seriously Ukraine is going to make inputs and efforts into our relations with Germany, or we will use Germany just to deter the Russian aggression. So I have a question to Mr. Vasyl Khymynets from the government, maybe the key expert on German issues in Ukrainian government.
Дякую дуже.
Thank you very much, Alyona, for your position that you stated. And before giving the floor to the next speaker, I would like to say that I would like to share the vision of the future of Ukrainian and German relations. So, Vasyl, you are given the floor. Good afternoon, dear friends. We thank the organizers for this opportunity to speak, to share opinions, to discuss matters. First of all, I would like to thank Alyona for her assessment. So maybe this is an exaggeration, but this is not a secret that for many years I have been working in the embassy in Berlin, and some time ago I also defended the thesis, and thanks to my colleague who is present in this hall, he helped me and supported me in the scientific area. And going back to previous times, the topic of Germany was not so popular in the scientific circles. We, of course, may argue about it. So many opinions, they expressed the position of the department I had, and I have 5 or 7 minutes to present the topic. Of course, we can discuss these topics for hours, and these would be constructive and good discussions, but I would like to be brief, not to break the time limit of 5 or 7 minutes, and I'm ready for questions, of course. And I would like to say about proper timing of this discussion. It is ongoing on the eve of the visit of the President of Germany, and also there will be the visit of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany, and this discussion is ongoing after the visit of the President of Ukraine to Germany, the visit to Berlin, to Aachen, where they had communication, and you see that political dialogue between Ukraine and Germany is active and constructive, and really is at a good level. And this is the influence, the role of Germany in the world, and this is all evident. We all know about it. And recently I read German newspapers, and in one article of Welt newspaper there was a citation: who owns Germany? That person owns Europe. So this citation shows the importance of good cooperation And this relation should be at a different levels with our German counterparts. And going back to this article, I would like to say that the title of this article is like this: Future of Europe is identified in Ukraine. And this is the title of the article, and I believe that this title, it can characterize the essence of the task, our task, the task of Ukrainian diplomacy, to provide understanding in Germany, and both on a governmental level and in German society, to provide the idea that Ukraine is really important for Europe in different spheres, in political, economic, social, and cultural sphere. And going back to discussion concerning concerning the paper that was presented to us, I believe it would be interesting to hear, and maybe this will be the new stage, to ask German society, maybe to formulate it like this: the future of democratic Europe is now being identified in Ukraine. So we are interested in the opinion of German society, and the relations with Germany. We need to build this relationship, and the main task is that our German friends, both at the governmental level and the business and society, they all should understand Ukraine better. But the situation now is not what we wanted it to be. That's why we have many opportunities for some manipulations, and Russian propaganda use these opportunities, Russian propaganda that is really powerful, and it is practically distorts the image of our country. And we face some situations when we are viewed through the prism of Russia. There are some things like corruption, Chernobyl. I do not want to say that everything is good. I have a very sober view. We should provide a realistic picture of the situation to be viewed properly. So we understand that we have a lot to do, but we should show and we should explain those things that we've reached, and we've reached a lot, and we should be proud of it, and we should not be ashamed of it, and we should pay attention to those factors, subjective and objective, that influence our situation, starting from the situation concerning Russian aggression and our historic past. You know that the Germans, our German counterparts, they have special relation to history, but we should speak about the history in order to remove different dogmas concerning the issues of language and the issues concerning war and many other topics. Once again, going back to this task, this is a titanic task. This is a task for all of us, the task of the government, the task of our diplomacy, but also this is the task of civil society, our business, and all of us. Because, for example, I saw the presentation of this brochure, and I saw that Germans see that they believe that Ukrainians leave a lot of garbage after picnics. Maybe this is the matter of social culture, and this is our common task. We should work together for our interests. And going back to the topic of our discussion, what should we do? As Alyona, I am not original, and I would say that we should work hard based on our national interests, and there should be the representatives of the government, business, and civil society. Everyone should join work, and this work will be hard, difficult, long, but we should do it. And we should speak about our achievements, and we should realistically speak about the situation in order not to have too high expectations about our diplomatic matters. The new old government was created, and many things happened. The visit of the president, and we expect for a visit. Going back to Alyona's speech, I would like to state the importance of cooperation with Bundestag. A lot of people who knew Ukraine, I once again stress this word, they knew Ukraine, but these people, they left Bundestag. The members are new, and it is important to work with the deputies, and we actively work in this area. We've mentioned the visit of deputies of Social Democratic faction. Once again, you should understand that this is really important. We should involve civil society or practice new forms. And in this delegation, there was an influential deputy who, when he was a child, a schoolboy, he visited Poltava in the framework of a friendship visit. Near Stuttgart, there are 3 small towns, and he went to Ukraine, and he's an influential politician, and he said, I want to go to Poltava because I visited the city when I was a schoolboy. So he came here, and he knew already something about Ukraine. What is also important, German deputies, they actively are interested in situation in Donbass, and they go there. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we help them, we cooperate in this. But not only deputies, we need experts. And Alyona and your colleagues and no Kirby Foundation experts also plan the visit. So people open their eyes on the situation. They have new vision of the situation. And I believe that in Germany there is psychological factor. Some people in society do not want to recognize that this war there is ongoing because of Russian aggression. And you all witnessed when the new Minister of Foreign Affairs in his inauguration speech, he said such a phrase that he said Russian aggression against Ukraine, and he is criticized by Social Democratic Party, he is criticized in the society. Recently, Spiegel published a big article about this topic, and people, educated people in Germany, they compare the new minister with von Moltke, who was the head of Polish staff, and he said that he tries to escalate this military situation. So we should discuss this topic. Once again, there is new government, the same chancellor, and for us it is really important. And the president of Ukraine has good relations with the chancellor, and they discuss all the sensitive issues that was voiced. This topic was voiced today, the sensitive issue. And the discussion is ongoing, and the best way is to communicate directly, as you know. And I call on civil society to be active. As of today, we have contacts and they are more active, but unfortunately today we do not have a youth union. And here Mykola Movchan is present here, Deputy Minister on Youth Matters. And we should have some institution, some organization, special organization, like, for example, in Poland. And we do not have an organization as German, Polish or Russian forum, and we should search for opportunities in order to strengthen the dialogue of bilateral cooperation. And gradually, I do not expect that we can do it in the nearest future, but gradually, step by step, we should go and touch the hearts of German people in order that they improved their perception of Ukraine. So what is also important, in Bundestag they created a group of cooperation with Ukraine headed by a really influential, competent politician who is really interested in the topic of foreign policy and in Mirror. And we've started the work in order that the members of the group would visit Ukraine in the nearest future. And there will be a lot of work ahead of us. And we, diplomats, we understand all this. And we will do everything possible in order to produce good results for society and people of our country. Thank you. Vasyl, thank you. You are completely right. The relationship between the two countries, these are not only the relations between the institutions, but also between expert communities, the youth, journalists, and also business, of course. In Ukrainian and German relations, business is really important. This is about investment and about some new social standards. And also there are many problems, and the biggest is corruption, and it influences business in Ukraine. And I would like to give the floor to Olena Stakhurska, Deputy Chairman of the German-Ukrainian Chamber of Industry and Commerce, because these issues are really important in bilateral relations. Could you please tell us about the work of this institution, about the challenges and achievements in the sphere of business in the recent years? I'm going to speak English.
Have 5 minutes to say good morning to Your Excellencies, distinguished members of the panel, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very honored today to talk on behalf of the German-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And just on a personal note, I'm doing that on a voluntary basis because I'm responsible for an international law firm operating in Ukraine and also working a lot with the German-based clients. And my position as a board member and as a Stellvertreter, Stellvertreter in English? Sorry. Deputy chairman is on an annual basis. So if you allow me, I would do just some entertainment with the slides and still to be in line. So sorry, I was like... what can I say? The representative of German industry and trade has been established already 25 years ago. So a decade ago, 25 years, the German and Ukrainian governments have exchanged the diplomatic notes and established the first office of the representative of the German industry and trade. Coming back to just a couple of years ago, it has been established the German-Ukrainian Chamber of Industry and Commerce. And that is what you see maybe on the behalf of the logo, there's AHK. AHK, that is a German introduction for the foreign chambers of commerce. And just some short notice to introduce it. And as you see, 2016, it was exactly during the times where the German and Ukrainian diplomatic and also economic relations have been extended further. Just some short notice about the organization of the foreign chamber German Chamber of the Commerce. So AHK, it stays in German, once again, for the Chambers of Commerce. 130 locations, 90 countries across the world. And what is the most important, what you see I put on the slide, AHK, the chambers are located only in the countries which are of the special interest for the German companies. So it means we have 25 years of the extending diplomatic economic relations in between Ukraine and Germany, and that is really a huge lift to this business platform with establishment of the chamber. Just focus of the chambers, not to talk too much because I don't have that much time. Official representative of the German companies in Ukraine. So it means it works on behalf also of the Federal Republic of Germany. That is also a membership organization. The member organization representative their interests of the members, being both interested German or Ukrainian of the host country, being interested in development of the bilateral relations further on. And that is also a service provider through the D International as well. So I will put it on a side, German-Ukrainian foreign trade and the development within the last 17 years. To say just some facts, in Ukraine we have a population of about 45 million. In Germany we have it's like 80 million. But the surface in the Ukraine is 4 times much bigger than in Germany. I wish I could do the same way easily to talk about the economic relations, about the economic comparison of both countries. But we see it also, I'm sorry, it couldn't be translated, but on the blue, that is the import from Ukraine, and the yellow, that is the export from Germany. And you see the difference. And by the end of the last year, we have the outcome that Ukrainian export was exceeded as well as the German import. And the figures have been taken from the sources of Federal Statistic Office Germany in Wiesbaden, so own calculations. Just to further, the categories of the goods of Ukrainian export to Germany 2017. Once again, you see the biggest part of this cake is automotive. That is understandable in each and single language, German, English, Ukrainian, whatever. And what is interesting, all of us know, as Ukrainian customers, we always know made in Germany stays for automotive. I think we see it on the streets of Kiev, plenty of German cars. But how many of you do know that many of the automotive spare parts have been produced in Ukraine? So in the recent past, automotive cluster which has been developed in Ukraine, today, almost in each and single German-produced car, we have the Ukrainian cables, we have some Ukrainian wireless systems, whatever. And that is exactly when you see made in Germany, but the hidden fact, what maybe they're just customers in Germany don't even know, just walking on the streets and answering the questions about Ukraine. But in each single German car, we have the hidden Ukrainian aspect as well. We have the really important spare part. And what we hear from the last 2-3 years, that is really the automotive cluster is developing. We have such huge plans and new factories opening also with our president participation, with participants from the German part. For example, I think those names are known, Leoni, Coastal, some new plants have been planned to be opened. And just to think about, everyone has been talking about Leoni, that is on publicly available information. They are planning already the 3rd factory to be opened in the Lviv district. So that was also one of the positive aspects about the decentralization reform which took place in Ukraine. That allowed to have a better dialogue between the German investors on general investors and local authorities, to agree on the better perspective also for the economy development. So if to go further on, we have the development of the Ukrainian exports to Germany, 2017, and in blue you see the values 2015-2016, so 2 years ago, once again, before the German-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce has been established. And just to mention some figures on, and in yellow, you see the changes which were in the past in value 2060, 2017. And once again, the biggest figures what we have agriculture. So we are coming once again back. In Germany, we have 80 million and 4 times less space as we have in Ukraine. So Ukraine has been known for it. And we see from the other perspective what would be some other good figures, and we have a figure in total, a plus of 25, almost 25%, 24 and 4. But we would like to see to be more realistic and more optimistic about the future of Ukraine and German economic developments and relations. What we have the categories of goods Germany imports to Ukraine, and here we have the cake. It looks more or less the same. And we see that one of the most imported goods what we have is machineries and equipment. And that is once again stays for the phrase what I told, made in Germany, that is already a stable, known brand. And that is exactly what we have been discussing today during the public discussion. That would be really a challenge to make such a brand, such a well-known brand for Ukraine, so that we are known not only for political reasons, but also for economic reasons. And maybe some of the really successful stories, German successful stories done in Ukraine, they are not being that loud. And what we say, it's you're not talking about your business success maybe to some competitors in your own country. So whatever the case, but we should do as much as possible and to show on the economic results that we can provide the better climate, the better environment for the German investments with a legal security. Coming back to my background as a lawyer, we need a legal security to attract the German investors into Ukraine. And that is also sometimes what is happening when we are talking to the German companies. All of us know automotive sector, IT sector. We have almost 80% of our IT software developments what goes for the export. Everyone knows about that, or at least hears a little bit. But some German companies are really hesitating or not that secure enough to give their sensitive data or sensitive assignments to the Ukrainian companies. Once again, we have an image of the country, a political image of the country. After that, we have successful stories of the German investor operating in Ukraine. And after that, we can hope on a long perspective or middle perspective that we will gain new German companies entering Ukraine. And when we're told we have 25 years of German-Ukrainian economic relations, we should see actually we have some German companies such as Siemens, such as, I'm afraid being a little bit nervous not to mention their proper name, but we have the German companies operating on this market already over for 150 years. For example, Siemens have been operating here many years and decades ago, even by the time when it was a territory of Ukraine, but some other country by that time. But still, we have this knowledge, we have this trust, and we have this perspective for such huge companies. So, development of the German imports into Ukraine 2017. So that is the same.
Олена, я мушу вас попросити підсумувати.
I'm doing just some short German economy in Ukraine. Manufacturing is what I told, mainly when we say on an average that is 10-15 years or 12-15 years, which really staying here and developing their business. We have only in automotive cluster we have around 35,000 of workplace in German business. And we have in Ukraine already operationally active 2,500 of German companies that are really where the representative office or the companies who are operatively active here. So I think I'm on time to have a discussion, and I will be happy to answer your questions maybe later.
Дуже вам дякую. Саме так. Я думаю, що ви ще матимете нагоду висловитися під час.
So I would like to give the floor to our audience and we thank you for reminding us about stories of success. So you can give these cases for our research. And also we will spread your presentation later on. So dear colleagues, if you want to express your opinion, we have about 25 minutes. Please be brief.
Good afternoon. My name is Evgeny Sharov from News International. I have a question to the Mr. Ambassador. The first question is whether Germany has made historic lessons from the 20th century history if we analyze the speeches of President's key message of Putin was Putin is creating, establishing USSR 2 to resolve this issue. Putin should resolve the issue of Ukraine. In your opinion, is it possible to that the Merkel-Putin Nord Stream 2, Nord Stream 1 or 3 pact like Ribbentrop's pact and to resolve the issue for Putin to restore the USSR? Thank you for your question. I have a short remark and a question to Olena and Mr. Reichel. The first remark is as a member of top-level group of cooperation between Germany and Ukraine in 2005-2006 and about the office in Sebastopol, which is occupied. First, Mr. Reichel likes mathematics, me too. 1.5 billion euros got by Ukraine from Germany as an aid during 4 years, as you said. This is very good fact, but during 30 years, if Nord Stream 2 is realized, implemented, Ukraine will be losing 2 billion every year. I said everything in my article in the Mirror of the Week last Saturday. The second question concerns this memo, which does not contain the word Crimea. There is Donbass word, but no Crimea. And this respects the policy of Germany of today, Hermetization of Crimea, placing this topic to the next generation is not allowed. We remember Donbass, but we forget about Crimea. This is impossible. The third remark, the recent visit to Sochi to Putin by Chancellor Merkel and the topic of arrest in Ukraine of the Russian news agency representative topic arrest, and Ms. Merkel promised to talk with Poroshenko on this issue, but we do not remember, we do not hear anything about Oleg Sentsov and 71 persons been detained by Kremlin in Crimea. We do not hear anything about this, but we hear the reaction to Mr. Putin's issue. And we have prepared the letter to Mr. Ambassador and the copy of our letter to Ms. Merkel. I will give it to you now, Mr. Ambassador, and proceeding from this, I have one question to Alyona: why Crimea topic is not in this, in the framework of in the scope of this memo? I lost my job in Sebastopol, and Mr. Shtiblikov also and another person, they are detained in Federal Bureau of Investigation of Russia's jails. And I have question to Mr. Ambassador. The German side often leave the issue of human rights, but when we talk about Ukrainians detained in Crimea and in Russia, we hear nothing at the top level. There are only some standard phrases in German mass media where the human rights policy of Germany really coincide with its priorities, political priorities as concern Ukraine. And taking the phrase who owns Germany, he owns Europe. The one who owns Swiss canton of Zug, where the Nord Stream office is located, this person owns Europe. We should give the room for answer for Mr. Ambassador.
Very broad questions with a lot of, okay, let's call it information given, yeah, where I have to contradict you. Yeah. First of all, I mean, or secondly, you remember that I spoke about maybe engaging less in accusations than in exchanging sober arguments. What I'm hearing here, Molotov, Ribbentrop, no mention of Crimea or Ukrainians in jail in Russia, and so this is extremely emotional and suggestive, and secondly wrong. Yeah? But let me take this one at a time. I mean, there's so much points touched upon, and I would have to contradict each and every one of them. Yeah? And that is, of course, put me in a difficult position because I am under time constraints here. But so I wonder, the first starting point of the first question was, has Germany understood the historical lessons of World War II? Well, honestly, you have doubts? I mean, all I can say is, of course we have, and I keep saying this on every occasion where it fits. Yeah? Secondly, and then, yeah, maybe I will take this. There are lots of these kind of suggestive points touched upon, but let me in turn try to be factual. As we were in the business of quoting, making German quotes, and one German quote which I like is, Politik beginnt mit der Betrachtung der Tatsachen. Policy begins with the look at the facts. So let's, since everybody is on Nord Stream 2, and this is hyped very much, let us touch upon tick the boxes of a few facts. Yeah. First of all, this is not a German government project. This is a project of Gazprom with financial support of 5 European firms, only 2 of which are German. One of the 2 German firms we're speaking about is about to be sold to a Finnish company. So it is a bit disturbing for somebody like me to be always kind of the addressee and to a large extent the sole addressee of Nord Stream 2 questions. There are several countries along the projected pipeline. All of them have to give permissions for construction purposes. We begin with Russia, of course, yes. Finland, they haven't permitted yet, actually, ironically. Then comes Finland, then comes Sweden, then comes Denmark, then comes Germany. Finland and Germany have at this point in time already given their permissions, these permissions being of a technical construction permit level or environmental. Third point is, so we still have Sweden out there, we still have Denmark out there. In fact, none of the countries, with the exception of Denmark, which are in a position to have to give permissions, have legislation in place which would at all allow them to forbid Nord Stream 2 for foreign policy reasons or because, as you say, Ukraine stands to lose 2 billion of transit income per year. That is not foreseen in our legislation. So if the German government one morning came to the idea, saw the light, and said, we are going to forbid Nord Stream 2, those who run Nord Stream 2, in particular Gazprom, would go to court in Germany and would win. Yeah? So it is, these are facts. Yeah, no, I mean, of course I can imagine that this is unwelcome news, but it belongs to the picture as it exists. Yeah? Now, you are aware, of course, that Chancellor Merkel is trying to organize a discussion about how one can make sure that Ukraine does not lose its transit income. With this in mind, my Minister of Economy was here recently, here and in Moscow, and they engaged in a conversation, and Chancellor Merkel in Sochi continued this conversation. Now, while discussing this, we have to be clear about what is it that Ukraine is really raising as objections towards Nord Stream 2. Because if we settle the matter of transit income, then why is it that I get these highly emotional, suggestive questions? Yeah? The answer that we tend to get here in Kiev is, this is not a matter of money. This is a matter of national security. Okay. Let's try to break down a little bit on a factual basis what this may mean, national security. There is the argument out there that once the first argument is Russia is unreliable. It breaks contracts. Correct. We've seen that. In particular, it breaks contracts with Ukraine. However, if there's no contract on gas transit with Russia, how would Ukraine earn transit income? Yeah? So I think there will need to be, also in the future, beginning 2020, there will need to be a contract. How can we increase the reliability of Russia as a partner in such contracts? One answer is, and that is the answer we are trying to give, is to involve third parties into this relationship, be it on a political level, be it on a commercial level. Commercial would be a consortium or some sort of participation of European firms in the management of the Ukrainian gas transit pipeline system. And political would be what has been kind of suggested by Chancellor Merkel, to have a fundamental agreement which is struck on a political level between the leaders, which is the basis of such a commercial situation. The other thing is, the other argument that I hear is that once gas transit, Russia is not dependent on Ukrainian gas transit, the coast is clear, Russia can attack Russia on a large-scale basis without any obstacle. Well, the first thing to say about that is, you all have experienced that the continuing gas transit has not been in the way of the annexation of Crimea, and it has not been in the way of aggression in the East. So what makes you think that, and you know better than I remember very clearly, I'm sure, that there was a lot of danger out there that Russia would go further with the troops they had amassed at the border. So what makes you think today that the gas transit is the factor that keeps Russia from doing things that are against international law? I don't understand completely. It's not like the gas pipes are a physical obstacle to any military advance of Russia. I mean, I've been to Bar, by the way, a compressor station which is being refurbished with the German support. And it's an important installation, but it's not like a physical obstacle. Yeah? The pipelines themselves run underground. It's only the compressor station that is above the ground. Yeah? So when such statements are being put out, like matter of national security, can we, among friends, be a little bit more specific and factual and discuss what this means concretely? And if we do, I think we can maybe have better chances of finding a way of coming together than if we throw these big statements at each other. Thank you very much.
Дякую, прошу. Так, пані Олена.
I would like to make you sure it was not targeted, in the focus of our memo was with whom to communicate. There were very many names from various spheres, domains and institutions with whom it is better to communicate. If you, Mr. Mikhailo, think that Ukrainian government should be reminded that Crimea and human rights violations should be represented in the memo, and militarization of Crimea should be also mentioned. Our memos, they are for discussion. That is why we organize discussions like this. To my mind, these topics are perceived, understood good in Germany, and they condemn everything which is connected with the occupation of Crimea, even more than the situation in Donbass. So the situation is not ambiguous. We can add Crimea into our memo. Thank you for your response. Left bank, internet mass media source. Of course, Germany is a friend of Ukraine, and we remember how we were for Miss Merkel on these elections when we observed how they were running as concerns Nord Stream 2. Ukraine was disappointed, and not only Ukraine was disappointed. One Bundestag deputy said that this position of Germany as to Nord Stream 2 is a kind of Brexit event which can make a stroke on the unity of Europe. So I have a question to Mr. Ambassador, whether Nord Stream 2 may become a factor that which caused the break up in the solidarity inside the European Union. And I have a question to the experts, whether Nord Stream 2 issue can spoil relations of Germany and Ukraine. Miss Svetlana, thank you. Svetlana Goodsall, National Institute of Strategic Research. I also have been working on the issues of relations between Germany and Ukraine. I visited twice Bundestag with scholarship studies, and I knew politicians those days in person, and as compared to 2006, as concerns Ukrainian-German friendship group, I wrote research for Prism company. We had political interest. I addressed 4 deputies of the Verkhovna Rada, our MPs. I asked them whether this group is active. They said we are members of the group only formally. You can address our head. It is true. This is the issue, that this group should be more proactive. How can we increase interest among MPs? The second issue, I am now writing the next intern material, and I am reading more and more German mass media sources, and I see the phrase "nothing works without Putin." Maybe this is a question to Mr. Reichel. It is conscious policy of Germany, or it is a part of hybrid war against whole Europe, not only Germany? Thank you. We cannot take more questions, so please, our honorable speakers, could you answer the questions now? We can start with Miss Alyona. No. Then Mr. Vasyl, you're welcome. Thank you. Several thoughts, including as concerns the topics which were risen. The topic of activities of German companies, it is very important that today we have the days when problematic issues in our relationship, bilateral relations always included the topics of commercial firms, and it is not in place now, and the positive effect of decentralization is highly appreciated by Germany now. German companies can address local authorities, and German-Ukrainian commerce and industry chamber was established. The businesses come not only to produce but also to improve living standards. It is also important that the representative of Germany, Georg Milbrand, he is working actively helping with decentralization reform and also the civil service reform. The Nord Stream 2 is a topic which concerns our interests directly, and we discuss it. We are discussing it permanently. Last week the President published article, a big article, and the comments of they are present in German mass media, and we try to explain to the society of Germany that Russia is fighting against Ukraine, but also it is fighting against liberal democracy in Europe. So building the Nord Stream 2, this is also a question of moral values, not only politics and economics. So we always raise issues, who is Putin, what is Russia, and what is on the background. So I think this topic would be on the agenda further, and there are more and more German politicians who publicly speaks against this project. Nothing moves without Putin. Yes, this thesis is also in place, but we and Europe are in the phase of hybrid war with Russia, so this thesis is really moved by Russia, promoted by Russia. So some pro-Russian companies, they get finances from Russia. We got facts which demonstrate the core of this hybrid war, and it is important for us, for diplomats, to explain who Putin is. Yes, he is everywhere, nothing moves without him, but he ruins, burns everything. MPs, they are separate branch of power, and in the Verkhovna Rada we have MPs who maybe they are not members of the group of cooperation, but they have cooperation with German partners.
I think you have noticed, if you've listened carefully, that we are speaking on different levels. Vasyl, whom I have a lot of respect for, says this is a moral issue, while we are saying, what can we do in practical terms to help Ukraine? I think we will have to find a level of common discussion here. It is all right and good, and many politicians, as was mentioned in Germany, also argue on this level of morality, which of course, however, in business transactions is not the determining factor per se. Also, when you speak about morality of doing trade with Russia or doing business with Russia, for instance, in the gas sector, let's take a step back and remember that the gas that is being used in Ukraine is 100% Russian gas, except the portion which is Ukrainian domestic production. So if and it comes through reverse flow, which means that Western companies buy the Russian gas and then send it further to Ukraine. So in other words, if there were no Western firms who would be doing gas business with Russia, we would all be cold next winter. Moral discussions have the tendency to be absolute. And there is such arguments are easy to make, but in the real world, it is one has to find a balance between the realities and the moral. And this is what I believe my government is trying to do, and I would hope that this is in the spirit of friendship which I evoked before, that this is understood and taken on board, and that we can enter into a meaningful, practical, also conversation on how we can deal with this very difficult issue. And I want to point out just once again, as we stand, Germany has no legal possibility to stop the two German firms I mentioned from participating in this project. Now, the second thing about how Ukraine is reflected in German media, and that it is usually discussed as a reflex of Russia policy. Yes, I think that's to a certain extent the way things are. That's not only true for Germany, it is true for almost every Western country. Think of the United States of America. We have a US president who has initially expressed a lot of admiration for President Putin, and now is placing sanctions on Russia at the same time while he is under investigation for potential collusion with Russia. At the same time, we're talking about whether somebody in Germany has pressed all the buttons regarding prisoners or Crimea or such rhetorical necessities for the Ukrainian discourse. But we are having an Italian government being formed, which consists of two coalition partners, which are both Russia friendly, if I'm not mistaken. But we are talking about Nord Stream 2, okay? I mean, yeah, because, yes, this is kind of, anyway, Nord Stream 2 is not new, so it is a little bit surprising that we are now, at this point in time, everybody here, so excited about Nord Stream 2. Why is that? Maybe it is easier, not as disturbing to criticize Germany for Nord Stream 2. I said it's unfair to be speaking to Germany alone on this, while other things are too disturbing to go towards, which are psychologically too difficult, because they are of greater importance. Anyway, I will leave it at that. Of course, one could extend this conversation endlessly, and we would probably still be on different levels of conversation: moral, legal, practical, and I think all these levels have justification and not only the moral one. I didn't really fully address this question. Nichts geht ohne Putin. You were pointing out that the media in Germany write about Putin. And I said, look, this is true not only for Germany or German media, it is true for everybody. As you know, German media are not under state control. So your question whether this is a deliberate German policy to see everything through the prism of Russia, I think the answer is clearly no. We have in the German coalition agreement for the first time a chapter which deals exclusively with Ukraine. So I think if we speak about the German government, I think this is not the way it is.
Дуже дякую. Так буквально.
Thank you very much. Just final remarks, please, Miss Olena, Mr. Andrei.
Es geht auch ohne Putin. When the German investors are in the press release are opening or planning to open at least 3 or 4 factories in Ukraine. We have now May 2018. We have already 4 big players that have announced opening of their big plants in Ukraine with further German investment coming into Ukraine. Furthermore, we have also for example, Alyona is one of they are opening the 3rd factory. The other one has been Coastal. They have been discussing about the new factory close to Kiev region, what I read from the press release and also from their district authorities saying for them. Another one press release, it has been published in March 2018. The company fix it, or I don't remember, but they are doing the constructions works. They have already one factory close to Kiev, and they are now trying to get a new plant, to build a new plant in the western Ukraine, in the Lviv region. And their fourth one is the Klingspor, so also one of the big players. So as long as it, initially, for the German economy, as long as it is a profitable business, they are coming into new countries. I just came back from Berlin, and the main idea was last week what has been discussed on a personal note, not talking on my behalf of the Ukrainian German Chamber of Commerce, but the German companies have enough of business already in Germany, so it should be really very attractive from the profitability and so on, to come to the new markets. So, and we see on the 5th month of the year, we have already 4 big projects, which would allow to create the workspaces for Ukrainians and to avoid the brain drain what we have in Ukraine at the moment. If we have the workplaces, we have the workplaces for the Ukrainians organized by the German investors. So it's only the economy, it's about the figures. Now political content.
Дякую. Дякую. Прошу пару речень.
Це німці кажуть, що
That's only one part of this saying. There's a saying, if you talk about lame ducks, and the saying is nothing work without this lame duck, and nothing work with this lame duck. And if you will go to Russia and discuss with the civil society in Russia, they will stress the point nothing works with Putin. That's why it's only this journalists use only the first part, because it was, let's say, more useful in this article. But the whole phrase is nothing works with and nothing works without.
Щиро дякую усім учасникам сьогоднішньої дискусії. На превеликий жаль, наш час завершено, ми не можемо більше.
unfortunately our time is over. We cannot continue our discussion. During 1.5 hours, of course, we cannot cover the topics because they are very huge. It is good that we discuss the issues, although the issues are are not easy. Thank you very much to diplomats for coming here, because they are short of time, and thank you for finding time to come here, and you can take all copies of all publications. Thank you very much.